The next panel, as you can see on the agenda, is around ESG. It will be moderated by an amazing member of the innovation community here, Francisca Barros, who, as many of you know, is my wife, and she is a partner at the Engine, founded by MIT, one of the amazing venture capital firms. And like Manolis was saying, it's one of the few around here that really has that long-term vision. So one venture capital at a time, we are making a difference, and we are looking for those longer-term investments. And with that, I'll leave you with Fran.
Wait, we need the rest of the panelists. Tell them to come. They're here. We're going to wait until everyone is seated, okay? Welcome, everyone. So today, we're going to moderate a panel around ESG and innovation, and how we can bring both things together. For that, I'm going to start with reading the bios. I need to do this so everyone knows who we have sitting here. So I'm going to start with you, Joseph. Joseph Vecchiolla is the president and CEO of Triumph Modular. Joseph is a global executive with an operating experience in over 64 countries, leading high-performing companies from 10 million to $1 billion in value. In 2021, Joseph oversaw Technofast acquisition of Triumph. Thank you, Joseph, for being with us today. Josefa Monge is the executive chair of Sistema B Chile, the organization that promotes B Corp in the country. She's a Chilean lawyer and social entrepreneur with an expertise in corporate communications. Josefa is also the co-founder of Cumplo, the main debt-based crowdfunder platform in LATAM, being its first legal counsel and VP of Corporate Affairs. And she's a board member until today. Josefa is also a board member of eClass, the leading blended learning company in Latin America. Both companies, Cumplo and eClass, are certified B corporations. Josefa also serves on the board of GSG, Chilean chapter for impact investment, as well as the Climate Action Committee of the Ministry of Environment. Thank you, Josefa.
Thank you.
Nicolas Shea is a business manager from the Pontificia Universidad Católica and also a professor of entrepreneurship at the same university. He's a long-time social entrepreneur and angel investor. He was also an innovation advisor of the Ministry of Economy between 2010 and 2011. He's also a co-founder of Cumplo. He founded G100, or G100, a philanthropic network that brings together more than 100 entrepreneurs who seek to accelerate entrepreneurship in Chile. And lastly, but not least, Lorenzo Gazmuri is a civil electrical engineer from the University of Chile and began his career at Philips International. After that, he joined COPEC, where he held various roles until 2017, when he became executive vice president. In 2020, Lorenzo became the president of ICARE. ICARE is a private not-profit corporation that is independent of the union and political interests, and is founded by businessmen and executives of various industrial sectors of the country, looking to promote and accelerate business excellence. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. And before we start with the conversation, I want to be sure that we're all on the same page of what ESG stands for, because some people know what it is, but not necessarily the real meaning. So we have the three letters. The E stands for environmental, the S is social, the G is governance. Environmental is really connected with climate change. Every company uses energy, produces waste, emit emissions. Ultimately, a company affects the environment, and the environment is affected by a company. The S is the social. It's about the people. So every stakeholder that your company does business with, and also includes diversity and inclusion. And the G is governance. Every company had a set of tools and processes internally to make decisions, priorities, lead their strategy. It's how a company actually complies with the law, okay? And in the last couple of years, we've seen a growth of this movement around ESG, what it means, and how companies are really trying to bring it as part of their core, especially driven by climate change, as you all know. And climate change, we're not going to fix it with a small incremental change. We must have disruptive and radical different approaches in how society works, operate, and ultimately how business create and drive innovation. So that, I want to have it here so we can kick off the conversation. And I would love to start with you, Joseph. You're a great case of a unique connection between Chile and Massachusetts.
Yes.
and a critical piece of today. One of the things we were talking earlier is how the two companies came together and how you're going to make sure that there's a common sense of purpose and that promotes sustainability, especially in the environment where you play, built environment construction.
Sure. Thank you, Fran. So if we think about the construction industry, it's not typically reported this way, but the construction industry is responsible for 38% of greenhouse emissions, 38%. Typically, we focus on transportation, 23%, but if you combine the manufacturing required to make building materials and the work done on site, the industry is pretty dirty in terms of how it has coped with greenhouse gases to this point. Technofast and Triumph Modular are both in the modular building industry. And if you don't know what that is, you might be able to see this, but these are Legos. And a Lego is the best illustration of what a modular building is. Now imagine a factory far from Massachusetts that manufactures a building larger than a tractor trailer, does everything in the factory. The plumbing, the heating, the air conditioning, the electrical, everything's done. The inside, the outside is completely finished. And when it gets to a construction site, it's simply stacked in place. You know what's fascinating about this industry is that according to the country of Germany that wants to be carbon neutral by 2045, they believe that 37% of carbon emissions due to construction are reduced with modular construction, 37%. Boston Consulting Group and McKinsey rarely agree on everything, but on this they agree that the reduction of modular buildings to greenhouse gas contributions is 38%. And so let's think about what that means for us. There's a lot of talk and action about what we can do in the future in 2025 and 2030, 35, et cetera. But the reality is those things are important. But what's also important is what can we do today? And so continuing on my theme of Legos, I just want to stack both of these here so you can see them. In 2021, $4 billion was spent in the state of Massachusetts to build apartment buildings. The same year, $2 billion on schools, $2 billion on offices, and $72 million on dormitories. Yet modular construction only represented, on average, 5% of that construction. Think about that. Think of the universities that build dorms. The buildings look the same. When it's all done, this is conventional construction. This is modular construction. They're built to the same stringent building codes. Everything looks the same. You wouldn't know which one was modular and which one is conventional. Yet the one that's red represents 95% of construction. The one that's green, 5%. I know we can do things for the future, but I'm also convinced with modular construction we can do more today.
How you are thinking of making that shift, how you can convince others in your really fragmented and crowded ecosystem to do that?
It's interesting because you're right. It starts with architects, designers, engineers. There are some firms that are leading the charge on that. Many are not. In Boston, I think if we were to look at the top 10 architectural firms, we might see some of them have done some modular projects, many have not. Owners and developers are the next part of that fragmented chain you mentioned. And so it's about education, and it's about understanding that it's not just an alternative to construction that's comparable, but why is it so much energy efficient? Why is it consume 38% fewer carbon emissions? Because with a conventional building, it might take 2 years to build it. That's 2 years on a construction site. 2 years of people doing different things on a construction site. The material waste when the red building is built, a conventional building, 15% of those materials end up in a landfill. Modular building, is built in 20 to 50% shorter time. And time means fewer emissions. That's
innovation.
That's the key.
Thank you. Josefa, you live and breathe purpose and mission. You work with so many different companies in Chile and in the region. What is your point of view? What's going on with ESG, and how we can get more companies and leaders to really embrace this?
Well, I think the medular question is what Milton Friedman asked 50 years ago. What are companies for? In that moment, he said, he wrote with very hard criticism to social corporate responsibility, right? And it was, they say, in reaction to CEOs spending corporate monies in philanthropic efforts. So the thing, if I could tell him, like, I come from the future. Yes. Huh? Yeah, if I could tell Mr. Friedman, hey, I come from the future, and believe me, climate change is not a joke. And we are facing social unrest all around the world. And we are facing the weakening of democracies. And there is people, and because we know, because we have like social media and everything we have now, there is people that is being left apart from capitalism. They don't fit in the system. So the thing is, with the information we have today, can we be doing business as usual? And for me, the answer is no. Mm-hmm. And also because I believe in capitalism and I believe in business, I'm a fan of businesses. I feel that when you benefit from a system and you honestly think that is the system that is best for the world, that drives creativity and innovation and competition, etc., then you should, you better do your best effort that this system works for everybody, for the great majority of people. Hmm? So ESG, going to your question, I think, ESG is positive. ESG is already here. I don't think it's the panacea of nothing. I don't think nothing is the panacea, but it was the try. So for me, it's the reaction of the financial system to acknowledge that an asset, of course, could be, the value of an asset could be affected by environmental, social, and governance factors. For me, it's nothing more than that. What we do try to do in B Corps is a little bit different. Of course, it's good to lower your risk managing these factors, environmental, social, and governance. But we try to do impact in those ways. So it's a little bit different. It's not like lowering the risk and that. And as I say, it's very difficult. It's not the panacea because you have to translate science language to business language, for example, in what all its climate change related. Mm-hmm. It's not easy. We haven't made an agreement on how we are going to measure ESG, how we are going to report ESG, but still it's worth the try again. Imagine when we didn't have a IFRS account, we still did accounting. And nobody would tell me, no, I won't do accounting because I cannot compare two countries, for example, right? So it's the same. We better start doing it, measuring it, because it really was the try, and it's what consumers, talent, and finance is asking for.
And Josefa, some of us believe that it's not just a checklist, right? That it has to be impregnated, and it's part of, like, critical part of the culture.
Absolutely.
I know that you care a lot about the people and the empathy on corporations and how they have to be aligned with that purpose. do you think that that could be, instead of like you're talking about measurement, it should be beyond measurement, right? Like how we can really intrinsically kind of bring those new behaviors and mindsets in the decision makers from top bottom to bottom up of an organization. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I know that measurement is not the most sexy part of a company, but you definitely have to do it. You have to make yourself the right questions and search for the answers. Because if not, it could stay like a very beautiful statement, but
Exactly.
you need to demonstrate, you need to mobilize. How to not make it just a statement? What we do in B Corps is that we need the owners of the company commitment in the bylaws of the company. So it's from the, it's not like I don't know, the crazy idea of the CEO at the moment. So it's from the owners of the company. And then we try to incentivize that this is a matter that is addressed in the board meetings. It's not like the communications office somewhere, a corporate responsibility office that is taking care of those.
At the board level.
It's in the board meetings. And the other thing that I think is helping is that KPIs and incentives for the executives are also indexed to ESG.
It had to be well aligned, basically.
And not only to the share value.
Thank you. Do you guys mind if I move my chair because I don't see you guys? So it's kind of weird. Okay. So, Nicolas, you've been in both sectors, public and private, and work with many entrepreneurs, and I know that you care a lot about everyone and the people, and we have a lot of inequality in the Latam regions. What is your stake on ESG? I know you care a lot about the S. What do you tell us about your perspective?
So first of all, thank you very much. It's a huge, huge privilege. I wish my mother was in the audience looking at me here in MIT. And with all respect to Joe and Lorenzo, but to be moderated by you, Fran, and I'm such a big fan of Josefa. So by being next to her, this is a huge, I've peaked. Anyway, so going to the S. Everyone in this room, regardless where we came from, we're extremely, extremely privileged, right? Doesn't matter really what happened before. Being in this auditorium is almost irrelevant because now we're at the same level. But 99% of Latin Americans and people in emerging markets are born in the wrong side, with the wrong color of the skin, with the wrong accent, with the, used to be the wrong telephone number. And if that's the case, you're just not going to make it. I like capitalism, but I'm not going to try to be not even remotely close as smart to Manolis, but I'll just give you one very obvious insight. An entrepreneur told me this: you're a fan of capitalism, but you know what? Without capital, how can capitalism work? And today, Latin America lacks $1.4 trillion. SMEs, just SMEs in Latin America, they lack $1.4 trillion. We have 50% of informal economy. Why? Because they're ignorant? No, because they're smart. Why would you formalize yourself to not make the challenge to make it to the end of the month even harder and pay taxes and red tape? Of course not. If I were an average entrepreneur in Latin America, of course I would be informal. Why would I want to, be formal and pay taxes? That would be a disadvantage. So if we don't understand this quickly, as with climate change, we will continue self-imploding. And Chile implodes every 40 years. For the past 200 years, every 40 years, Chileans try really hard to destroy the country. It's crazy, but that's, I don't know, that's Chileans. I would assume Argentinians have shorter cycles, but I love Argentinians. Yeah, so if we don't pay attention to the access to capital, we will continue to self-implode. And this is huge, immensely biased. Cumplo, we're a platform, basically, we Uber for loans for SMEs. It's not our money. We have limited access to capital, right? We connect investors with SMEs. And so there's this huge problem, but then there's this huge opportunity. And actually with COVID, we just, exploded upwise. Because there's never been more liquidity in the market, right? As the challenge in Latin America is, where do we get this $1.4 trillion for SMEs? Goldman Sachs' largest challenge, how do they invest $1 trillion that is yielding zero, in real terms? The money is there, the problem is there. Being able to use technology, and going back to the S on the ESG, because I don't know, I hope we're helping the environment and the communities, I'm sure we are. But we started Cumplo because we want to solve poverty. We want to solve inequality. And it's so unfair that you're not going to get the money you need. You have the talent, you have the energy, you have the business model. Don't teach me the fish, give me the freaking rod, and the bait. I have already gone to seminars, I know exactly how to fish, I know where the fishes are, but this water's polluted, fish are infected, and I don't have a rod, so come on. And that's the case for most of Latin Americans. Now, there's such a huge opportunity, because this is gonna happen. So I would invite you guys to look at this huge untapped 300 million sector of people that are underbanked. And actually, and just to finish, another insight from the school across the street. Can you mention the word here, Harvard? Anyway, I did.
They were friends.
But I heard this from Ricardo Hausmann some years ago. He said, it's very interesting, and coming from Hausmann, he said, education is overrated. What do you mean? I heard it at Harvard, by the way, education is overrated. And he said, yes, we're overspending in education and underspending in capital for SMEs. This is like, the rockets are like two impulses, right? The first one, like, it gets you to the limit of orbit, and then you have the second one. Same thing goes with capital. And I don't think we are aware. We try to fix supply chain financing and SME financing, and we just do a small portion of the problem. And it's so hard, so damn hard to get leading business people, leading companies to understand this, that if we don't take serious and we don't, it's fascinating, to solve poverty and do it quickly, our country, our region will never be sustainable.
So, Nico, you have a lot of different people from different industries here in the audience, both Chileans and Americans. What is the call to action? How people can get involved, how they can start thinking about solving that problem particularly? So we get more tangible.
So, Cumplo was started because our nanny came to us in tears, asking for money to pay her retail, I can't use that word, credit card, installments. She was being charged 73% per year. She owed 17 times her salary, and she was there. I had no idea. She had been working with us, taking care of our kids for 2 years. I felt so guilty for not being aware that this amazing woman was being every day. And you know what? She's one of 6 million Chileans. We have 16 million. 6 million, half of the population, of the working population in Chile, is defaulted on their loans. We have a 6% monthly late payment rate. And the best customer, if you're a loan officer in Chile, or you're a retailer or whatever, your best customer is the one that pays late. If you get late payment customers, you will get a bonus. And the thing is I'm sorry, it's so fucked up There was a company, it's called La Polar. I don't know if there's someone, maybe they're the owners here, but it reached a point where loan officers were being compensated by unilaterally renewing the loans. Think about that. I don't need to call the customer. I just, I will tell that this guy, oh my God, you got me started. I'm so sorry,
yeah.
but
So
I get,
to bring you back, that
and
was a
that
call
is
to action for you,
happening every
Nico?
day right in front of us. So if you want to do something for the economy, for Chile, for the region, make sure everyone around you, ask them, what's going on in the personal finance. Just one last thing. Do you know what's the product that's most bought on credit in Chile? TVs, PlayStations, cars. ¿Cómo se dice carne molida?
Ground beef.
Ground meat.
Yeah.
Ground meat. Lower incomes people in Chile. The product most bought on credit, on installments, is ground meat. Think about it. We're indebting our people so they can buy ground meat at 100% interest rate.
Thank you. You got us thinking. Lorenzo, you've been both at one of the leaders energy companies in the region, but also now at ICARE, where you work with so many different executives and business across different industries. Do you think that ESG and in general sustainability and thinking about the planet and the way that we run our business is something that is today top of mind of our executives, of the CEOs of the companies in Chile?
Well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. I would like to first step back, and the business community each 10 years has a new fashion coming in. We talked 30 years ago about re-engineering. 15 years ago, we started talking about social corporate responsibility, and most of that was complete failure. So we are running out of time. So it's so important to understand that this is not a fashion. And I would like to make it deep, we have to conceptualize what it really is. And to do that, I would like to combine the global companies face a global world and a local world. And trying to understand the threats that we faced in the global world, I will refer to an MIT teacher who we met 4 years or 5 years ago. And he was very histrionic, but very precise, and showing the MIT building. He said, this building is focused on 3 numbers. And everybody said, hey, this guy is new. The first numbers were 1.7. The planet is generating 70% every residues, more than what it can process every day. Second, 26. There are 26 people who control half of the wealth of the world, inequality. And 800,000, he said last year we had 800,000 suicides in the world. We are concentrated in these 3 numbers, he said. So environment, inequality, social disruption. And he said something more. Being a teacher at MIT, he said, the states and the universities won't solve this. Companies should solve this. So we face a world where we have these 3 big threats. But additionally, companies face a local reality, where these 3 things are present, but additionally, companies generate negative externalities in environment, probably not in inequality, but in social also. So understanding that it's part of the job that we have and that we are running out of time to mitigate and to change this trend is essential. We're not available for new fashions, okay? But it can become a fashion. If you look at economists, 2 months ago, economists cut and said, well, the only real thing that's happening is E, social when Josefa talks about, and Nico talks about the social disruption in Chile, it happens each 40 years. So someone could go back to Friedman and say, this is not company's problem. We pay taxes, we comply all the regulations. Okay, guys, but you won't be able to operate. We need social license. Someone in the forest industry, the president of one of the companies, said, we can't have a profitable business in areas where communities are miserable. And someone could say, well, that's a problem of the state. Yeah, probably. And what? Are we going to keep waiting for that to happen? So I think if you add these two things, it's a big challenge for the companies to understand that we have to take care of the three things. If we don't do that, capitalism will be destroyed. There's no way that it can sustain. And I believe in capitalism. I'm the president of ICARE, who is financed by business companies in Chile. We're not in the short term, we're looking, but hey guys, we're running out of time. Yeah. So I think it's happening, and it's being pushed by three things. And I think it's very important. Consumers are changing, and that's nice. Consumers are pushing companies to say, I just want to buy your product, not only because it's a good product, because you are reliable, but I would like to know what else are you doing? And customers are very intelligent, and they're pushing companies to have a purpose, to take care of their people, to look at social problems. So that's changing. Mm-hmm. Second, talent. All of you guys who are studying here, when you look where to work in the next 10 years, you will not go only to the company who has the biggest EBITDA. You will love to work in companies who are changing the world. So companies who are still thinking this is a fashion are realizing that they're losing customers, they are not being able to capture good talent. So that is pushing this, but it has a lot of risk. A lot of risk. In Chile, only 19% of citizens have some trust or much trust in private companies. 19, it's not. So when we are talking as companies, we know that at least 81% of people hearing us or are indifferent or just don't trust in us. So we're running out of time. And I think that's completely different to what we lived in these early fashions. Okay?
So with that, we're all aware the clock is ticking, the window is really shortened. How do you think that we can really bring that understanding? Is a lack of awareness that is going on, Lorenzo, in the industry, in those managers, those CEOs, those shareholders that you were saying, Josefa? How we can really make them understand the importance to really start thinking about doing businesses, to thinking about the environment and all the stuff that we've been talking today?
The first thing I would do is don't trust the sustainability reports. No. That's something beautiful that some area of the company did, but it doesn't talk about your reality. I'm making a joke. You have to have a sustainability. But thinking that ESG is compliance, I have to fulfill a list of things, that's crazy. If COPEC finance 2 or 3 solar panel companies, but we keep polluting, we don't take care of the garbage we produce in our stores, that's brand washing. And the beautiful thing of social networks, that it comes back immediately. So I think it's very important that ESG has to be in the core of the company. It's not a sustainability manager that was brought into the company. It's the operational manager, the marketing manager, the commercial manager. It has to be core, because if not, it doesn't build trust and it's not real. And that's a big shift. I think that's happening, but it will take time, because everybody feels we have a very nice sustainability report. Oh God, that report is not talking about what we companies are really doing. It talks from what we expect to be and not from what we are. We pollute. We have accidents. 8% of COPEC customers every day leave a station saying, I didn't receive a good service. It's the best of the industry, yeah, but it's an 8%. How do we change that to be a 1%? How do we make our people who work in our company feel that we're changing their lives? How do we make communities understand that we're creating value? That's a big change.
Yeah. So I have a couple of questions for the whole group. You guys can feel free to grab it as I go. So you mentioned, Lorenzo, the next generations and how they're really caring today about companies that have a mission, that have a purpose, and really that's making a shift in where they're going to work, what they're going after. Years ago, it was all about technology, Facebook time, et cetera. Right now, it's all about climate, and the companies are really solving the problems we have today. So how we can make that also happens with the incumbents, the larger strategic industries that we have in the world today, and especially in Chile, there are so many big corporation industry in forestry, but also energy, et cetera. How we can bring that new talent to fit into the way that we think, and we change. And you're going through a change right now. You have a merger of two companies. Do you want to start?
Well, sure. I think you touched on it. It's talent. And the question is that every executive struggles with is how do you attract and retain the top talent? And what does that mean to attract and retain? Well, people want to believe in something bigger than them. I do. I think we all want to believe in something bigger than us. But it has to be more than an empty promise, because there is some cynicism out there with all the greenwashing, and it's been touched on. People want to believe that the company that they are part of is going to make a material impact to the world, right? The second thing is they want to feel valued. And some of the challenges I see in for-profit corporations is, by definition, a shareholder and a CEO's responsibility is to deliver value to the shareholders. Mm-hmm. So many CEOs say, we'll put our people first, but B corporations can say, we put our people first because they're not accountable to the shareholder the way a for-profit entity is. But you have to put your people first. If you don't, you can have the greatest mission, but if you don't put your people first, if you don't invest in them, if you don't promote a diverse workforce, if you don't have equity within the people in your organization, then they're not going to feel valued, and whatever your mission is doesn't matter. It's got to be both. You have to invest in your people, they have to believe you care about them, but also they have to believe about the bigger thing. What's your company about, and does that help make the world a better place? I think those are very important.
Anyone has anything to add on that one? Or I can switch to another question.
Yeah, I think Americans call this like FOMO, the fear of missing out.
Yep.
I think it's very powerful driver. So big companies, of course, I mean, I talk to recruiters all the time, and they say the kind of interviews they are having with the newcomers and the new generations are absolutely different from the ones 10 years ago. The kind of questions they make, how they challenge, like what is the impact of this company, what are you doing with the I don't know, pollution and climate change and inclusion and diversity, etc. So it's no wonder some people have called this kind of capitalism like a woke capitalism, like of the politically correct, and maybe there is something, I mean, there is some truth on that, but I prefer to call it like a more conscious capitalism. And going back to what we talked before, is can we, with information we have, can we be doing business as usual or not? So for me, it's FOMO, the fear of missing out, that the companies, and because the competition they are facing with the newcomers and the innovators and unicorns and that, they better get on the train, or it will be too late.
Do you guys think that, is there also kind of a fear that by really focusing on the environment and the social aspects, you're going to have to sacrifice returns or profits? What is your take on that?
I think it's a old paradigm. And probably the best way to look at this is make the parallel with digital transformation. Traditional companies thought, I expect that it was in the past, but there's a lot of this today. They still think that digital transformation is digitalizing the process they always did. And they had a tough time understanding that it's not that it's creating new business models that the digital world enabled that were not feasible 10 years ago. So when you look at that and say, well, the business opportunities behind being environmentally friendly in the circular economy, the technology to move to a different energy generating sector is huge. And in the case of COPEC, we started talking about new business when we saw the threat that our traditional business was going to start declining. But my view today, we should have done this 20 years ago, saying, let's start thinking in the future, not because our actual business is being threatened, but because there's a lot of new business. So I think the old paradigm that development and environment are in conflict, that's not true anymore. That working with communities and putting in risk your business, it was another paradigm. When you work with communities, you see that communities are expecting dialogue, be part of your dream. They are not expecting to share the value of the company. So I think it requires, and let me go back to the Innovation Day.
Yeah.
Because companies will be able to attract talent when they become really innovative. And that's a big shift, because the pyramid is young people are down here, guys who take decisions are up here, we are all old, the new guys who have the ideas are here. You have to invert this pyramid, and that takes time. But look what happened with digital transformation. When I started here 40 years ago, my mother bought in Sears. Sears. Where's Sears today? Amazon. Amazon didn't exist. The new companies disrupt the traditional companies in 10 years. And that will also happen with ESG. If we take ESG as a fashion, okay, but there are companies that are moving fast to understand that's part of their core. But we need talent, and talent needs to go to organizations who have a purpose and who give them the opportunity to innovate, to change. And that's a big change for big companies. You know?
Can I comment on that, Fran?
Yes, and then Nico, go to you.
So I don't think about the impact of corporate profits as much as maybe a bigger issue that I think is not talked about a lot, which is as we go toward a more sustainable future and as we make the impact of the environment that we need to make, what is the impact, and to Nico's point earlier on the cost of ground beef and credit card debt, what is the impact to the less fortunate on these initiatives? Because if it's going to raise the cost of everything, who's paying for that? And how does that impact the rest of the world, the people that can't afford it? It's easy for someone who's a politician to say, we need to do this, we need to do this, but the person who pays is ultimately the one that we have to find out, how do we help that person? How does our press toward a better environment, what are the collateral impacts to the less fortunate, and how are we going to bridge that?
And what we were talking earlier, how you actually drive innovation that is not just only for a niche segment on the market, but also actually that really enables the ones that don't have the access to have the access. We're talking in the construction sector, for example, in the US, there's a huge demand. The cost is super high. So we were talking with Joseph, like, modular construction is one of the enablers to actually create more affordable solutions. We're seeing the same in food and other aspects of society. So that is an interesting kind of common thread. Driving innovation goes back a little bit to Nico, what you were saying earlier, to really start thinking about everyone and providing that access, that sometimes we forget about it.
So I would challenge the question. And by the way, I'm sorry, precision, but the ground meat was for the lowest quintile of the population, which makes it even more horrible. I have great respect for large companies. I'm an early stage entrepreneur because I would be a lousy manager. I'm very honest. So I have great respect. I see it's much easier to start a company than to grow it and to, I actually haven't done that yet. We're in the process of doing it, but not there yet. Having said that, I think incumbents are overrated. And I got this insight 5 years ago. It's a long story, but when we started Cumplo, we had a huge pushback from regulators, the banking industry. I mean, I agree, following regulation is, unfortunately, it's not good enough because most of the regulation is drafted by the incumbents, right? You're not quoting me on the things I'm saying, right?
No, this is off record.
This is a safe place to speak. But come on, let's speak anyway. So for many years I was like very annoyed. I said, how can this be possible? This guy was my professor at university, and now he's in the board of the bank, and he's looking the other way. And come on, what happened here? What happened with free market? What happened with monopoly was the enemy? The concentration of wealth was the enemy? By the way, if I had a monopoly, I would most likely act that same way. Yeah? So this is not a moral judgment. I would protect my monopoly. There's nothing more great than a monopoly, right? Especially if it's granted by the government. The right copyrights are licensed to be a monopoly, but it has to be temporary. Otherwise, it's a disaster. But anyway, my point is, the chairman at that point of the third largest company in the country came to me and said, stop whining. What do you mean? Stop whining. I lead one of the largest companies in Chile, and you don't realize what a disadvantage we are at. Do you realize start a company from scratch in the digital age, being cool with all the branding? I mean, you entrepreneurs should realize what an amazing opportunity you have and stop whining, because incumbents are not going to change. Because it doesn't even matter what the owner wants or his children want or the family office wants, because, the incentives are in the middle, and go and change the operation of go and tell the person whose, bonus and trip to Miami is indexed to, whatever bad practice, or inefficient practice. That's just not going to happen. So I guess my message is, I don't know if anyone can be an entrepreneur, right? But go back to Chile and start a company. I mean, guys, it's heaven. There's a small country called Chile. Everyone knows themselves. And if you're sitting here, you will have access to that network. They really want to change. We're really aware of impact in social networking. Starting it, you're going to have a huge advantage. You're going to try very quick, very cheap, and then come to the US. Yeah. And stay connected to Fran and to the engine and to Joe. And look Christian Goldberg, what that guy did, it's amazing. He started with those blocks from Chile, 20 years ago? And now the country must be worth, I don't know, $1 billion, $500 million? That's what you need to do. I mean, fine, if you, I don't know if Jose Ignacio Escobar is in the group, but if you can be the CEO of Colbún, I would take that job also, but I want to make, there's a huge, let's stop whining, let's get our act together, let's start companies, let's create jobs. I love Cumplo, it's a super cool company, but when I was starting Cumplo, David Vélez was starting Nubank. I know David, I have so much respect for him, but I was like, we should have started a bank, and let's just go right to the guts of the system, and let's do the cool. So I'm so excited about the companies that we will see in Chile in the next 10 years, the new COPECs, the new Banco de Chiles, and remember, I have, again, huge respect for Falabella, but they could have bought Mercado Libre 10 years ago for $400 million. Falabella was worth 20 billion. Guess you know what the values are now, right? Falabella is worth 10. Mercado Libre is worth 150. Go and start Mercado Libre.
I love your call to action to the audience. And also, given that we are in ChileMass today, how we actually make sure that there is a bridge, because there's so much innovation happening in Chile. Tecnofast is a great example. You also saw it through COPEC and MAPCO in the United States. It can be both ways, right? So how we make sure that we can really create that connection. We can bring people here, get them educated, get them with the hunger of being entrepreneur, founding companies, go back to Chile, to Santiago, to Latam, to the region. Any thoughts, any advice for everyone that is here? We have a lot of students from different universities in Boston. I would love to hear from you so you can shake them. And,
Me?
well, everyone. You already did it.
Who hasn't been in Chile? Raise your hand. Everyone has been in Chile?
Oh, nice.
Oh my God, you're missing out. It's the loveliest country in the world. We love Chile.
Oh, wait, Lorenzo was going to talk.
I'm sorry.
Oh, my message is, I was here studying back in the 70s, and it was a completely different world, and the opportunities you have today to connect. I think the bridges is people connecting with people. There's probably not a better place to be in the world than Boston. I love Boston. But the bridge is done by people, by connecting, but doing what Nico is saying, trying, developing new businesses. The opportunities in Chile are huge. Wherever you look at the different sectors, there are big companies that leave big holes for new companies coming in. I think Chile has some sort of responsibility over the region also. There's a lot of discussion about the rest of the countries. I think Colombia is a big country that has huge opportunities. But I think at the end, the question is make connections with people. And what ChileMass is doing is providing these opportunities of connection. Today, everybody is connected, but connection is more than just communication. It's relying, it's trusting, it's let's this do together. And what we see everywhere, if you have time, and I don't know if there's a plug and play in Boston, but if you go to Palo Alto and spend the day in plug and play and see thousands of people try new business models, you have to tell them, speak slowly because I'm old. They are so fast, and they are less than 35 years old, and they're developing things. You say, how can I be so stupid? I never saw this opportunity. That's happening here in Palo Alto, in Berlin, in Tel Aviv. I hope it's happening at a different scale in Chile, but those are just young people connecting between themselves. I think that's the message, because we need to change those countries. These three numbers that Otto gave me, when Otto gave us these numbers, I discussed him. But I came back and studied, and he was fully correct. And probably those numbers have degraded in the last 5 years. So go back and work and connect.
Thank you. Any last thoughts from the three of you before we?
Sure. Thanks, Fran, for a great debate. Thanks, everyone on the panel. It's been great to be here. Fernanda, thank you for inviting Technofast and Triumph Modular. We're very appreciative to be here today. And, you know, I did not know this organization existed, ChileMass, until a few months ago. And I thought we were sort of unique in that we had a company from Chile acquire a company in the U.S., and I do want to recognize three people here from our fantastic company at Triumph Modular. We have Jocelyn Beliveau here, our Senior Director of Technology and Human Resources. We have Nicole Perron, Sales Manager for Northern New England. And we have Felipe Echegarri, who just moved here from Chile as our Chief Financial Officer. And so we're sort of living ChileMass, and it's a fascinating thing, and we're thrilled to have been part of this opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah, me too. I'm very thankful to be here for the invitation, Fran. So ChileMass, thank you very much. So to your question, and in the B Corp side, well, you know that B Corp is an American invention, right? But the nice thing is that Chile is the country with more B Corps per capita in the world. So something is happening in Chile that social innovation is so popular and I don't know, and everybody wants to do social innovation. So we work a lot too with Imagen de Chile, with how's the name in English?
I think it's Imagen de Chile. It's
Imagen de
fine.
Chile?
Yeah, I don't think that they have an English.
So the Chile branding, and one of the elements that we work with them is to put Chile like in this window that, I mean, that Chile could be it's a sustainable country, and the exports of Chile are sustainable, and that we are driving social and environmental innovation. And the last thing I wanted to, like a final comment, is something that we also do in Sistema B and B Corps, is that the social and the environmental elements are interdependent and are intertwined. And I will tell you 2 reasons why. For example, so we do know that pollution and climate change would affect primarily to the most vulnerable people. So you can see that, for example, in climate migrations, the sea level rising also, or the drought, they are affecting primarily the most vulnerable people.
Natural disasters.
And on the other hand, just try to do conservation without the people, without the community. So we have a couple of cases in Chile that they were like very well-intentioned people trying to protect one little animal, but in doing that, they forgot the community. So they put like fences around the place where this little animal lived, and so the community had no more access to the river with the cattle and whatever.
Disrupted, basically.
And of course, if you want to do conservation, and you don't do it with the people and with the community is the first guardian of the biodiversity and of the forests and that. If you teach them, I mean, my strategy would have been like, name the school of the place, like the rural school of the place, name it with the name of the animal, and that everybody is talking about the animal, and the kids are like the guardians of the animal, whatever. So this is why they are intertwined. And going back to governance, not a nice statement, so you need to put it in the KPA, related to the KPA, and has to be like matters to be addressed by all the board meetings.
Thank you.
So 2 final insights. One, although I guess we all love Chile, but we're small, remote. We're really not good at anything. We had like a #1 tennis player for a week. And so we're like a mediocre, and I'm quoting an economist. He said, but we're #1, irrefutable #1 in the world. We're the country that in the shortest period of time have gotten the largest percentage of our population out of poverty. #1, more than China, more than India, more than anyone. Chile. But that's stopped happening. And we need to keep on going. And I think the role of many of you here is so important for that. And the second final remark would be, if you, and going back to the title of the panel, Innovation in Times of ESG, if you're an incumbent company and you don't really, as Lorenzo was saying, put ESG in your core, or ESG, B Corp, whatever, but if sustainability is not at the core, you won't exist 10 years from now. If you do exist, it's because there's something going on between you and government and regulator, and there's some shady stuff, because you shouldn't exist. Those companies should disappear. And on the other hand, if you're thinking about starting a business without putting the purpose, sustainability, the environment, the development of your community at a very important level, you're just not going to make it. Who's going to want to work for you? So it's a matter of survival.
Thank you. And I know you have something. Joseph, you want to say something?
Oh, yes, thank you. I said put your people first, and I didn't acknowledge one of our rock stars, Emma March, so Emma I didn't forget. So she's our marketing manager. Thanks for the great display you did for us. I wanted to mention that both MIT...
She came up with the Legos idea? That's brilliant.
She's marketing. The brains are in marketing. The second thing I wanted to mention is that both MIT and Harvard, a few years ago, each built a modular building on their campus. The innovation lab at Harvard University was built by Triumph Modular, which is a modular building. And at MIT, right 6 minutes from here on Vassar Street, we built a facility there, about 15,000 square feet, also modular. So both institutions have done great work in advancing the cause of modular, and I forgot to mention that earlier. The last thing I want to say is, if there are innovators in the room, we should never confuse monetizers from innovators. The majority of the innovators that have ever lived, we've never heard of. There's not books about them. They're known by some people, but not as widely as Elon Musk and Bill Gates. And so oftentimes when we talk about innovators, we think about, to innovate, I have to monetize. But if all the innovators who lived before us thought that way, we wouldn't have the innovations we have today. So it's okay to innovate. It's okay to contribute your brain power. It's okay to contribute your skill to innovation. It doesn't necessarily mean you're the one that monetizes. It could be somebody several generations from now, and that's okay. It shouldn't stop us from innovating. Thanks.
Thank you. Lorenzo, do you have anything? Or
I have one more broad reflection. When I talk with people that are in postgraduate, in those years, there's a mood, a pessimistic mood in the world. There's something in social networks that promote the dark news. But my view is the other way around. I think the world is moving in the right direction. The amount of energy being produced with new renewable sources is outstanding. Even McKinsey got those numbers wrong some years ago, said, well, this will be the path, and it's exploding. If you look, I take pictures with my telescope, and you see that the pictures of being taken of different areas of the world. The world is greener today than 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. The trend is very good. We have a stock, very negative. And probably from that point of view, the stock of environmental damage is very significant, but the trend is very good. Then the amount of knowledge being brought in, what we just heard about how medicine will change in the next years. So, hey guys, be optimistic. Even you stay in the US or in Chile or wherever, there's a lot to do. It's a very nice time to be alive. So take advantage of that. Don't believe all nonsense in social networks. The world is becoming better. All the discussion about democracy, it's good. It's good. It's stressful. The process Chile is going through is stressful, but at the end it will be good, because we will be building something where everybody shares some values. I'm not that optimistic that it will be the house of everybody, but my concern when I meet my kids with their friends in a barbecue in Chile, in Calafquén, there's a mood. We won't have kids. Why bringing kids to this world that is being destroyed? Hey guys, that's not true. Be optimistic. And you have a lot of things to do. You will change the world that we spoiled. So go ahead. That's it.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. You can grab your minutes. We're good. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, with those optimistic words from Lorenzo, I want to thank all the panelists, the speakers, Manolis in the morning. And now we have a 25-minute coffee break. Please, let's be back at 11:45 for Kate Larson's presentation. And like I said earlier, let's mingle, let's talk to each other, let's connect, and let's make our dreams a reality. Thank you, everybody.